Welcome back, everyone. By now you should have watched the series of videos putting you through the concept of marginal utility. So just remember, when we did comparative advantage, you actually had your first taste of the concept of the budget constraint and opportunity cost. Now you've got an additional concept of marginal utility. In class, we're going to do mathematical problems, technical problems, working through that. But this video is just going to gather some ideas based on Becker's path-breaking work so that you can understand how these models can be deployed to explain things, and also the role of theme in our class, assumptions, invisibility, hypervisibility, representation, assumptions in how you set up your model to make your explanation. So we already know that Becker has used the concept of comparative advantage, opportunity cost, relative costs, comparative advantage, to explain male-female differences in labor allocation. According to Becker, you could use comparative advantage to say that either because men are better relatively at market work, or women are better relatively at unpaid work, and there can be multiple potential sources of that. There is a comparative advantage when people marry for a division of labor where the person does what they're relatively best at. So if men are relatively better at paid work and women are relatively better at unpaid labor, that should be the result. The sources of this can be diverse. So that's one. There is a second question. Theory of comparative advantage is a little complicated. On the surface, you want to go to absolute advantage. You want to talk about how men are way better at paid work and men just completely suck at caring for their own children. Or women just really not that good at getting jobs, or women just really love to clean the toilet bowl because that is what we're best at. Absolute advantage, which would imply that people who are really opposite would be the ones marrying each other, right? But it turns out that's not what the data shows. Instead, what the data shows is something called assortative mating. Assortative mating, coming from biology, in data and theories about how species mate selection happens among birds and mammals and whatnot, indicates something really interesting. It turns out we assort, that's why assortative, we assort our dating and hence our mating to look for people pretty similar to us. Pretty similar to us. Comparative advantage is highlighting differences. Men and women are different. So if that's the theory, how do you explain what's actually happening in marriage markets and dating markets, where people actually look for people to date who are pretty similar to them? Educated people look for educated people. Folks look for someone with the similar ethnic background. People look for someone similar cultural tastes. So, okay, now this is a very interesting data problem. And Becker was aware of this. In terms of data, we find that instead of looking to date or marry someone who is hugely different from us, the highly educated billionaire does not look for the uneducated woman who's a great cook. That's not what's happening. We look for people actually very, very similar to us. So if we're using comparative advantage to explain what's happening in the data, what do you make of this? What do you make of this? Look around the world. People are dating people similar to them, similar background, similar education, similar ethnicity. Interracial dating is actually rare when you look at global data. Inter-ethnic marriages and interracial marriages often take proactive additional work. I know this. I am in an intercultural, interracial relationship of since 89, so 24, many years, almost 40 plus years. But it wasn't an easy choice. I had to talk to my parents. I had to find out more about my spouse's preferences. He had to learn my food, my culture, my music, right? So usually we're not actually looking for people who are opposite of us, as comparative advantage would suggest. We're looking for people who are pretty similar to us, as assortative mating would suggest. So Becker's second innovation was to say, look, include utility. Utility, choice, preference, taste, desire. So in comparative advantage, I only focused on the production side. With assortative mating, I'm going to include the utility or preference side. And the reason you want someone similar to you is partly because they're going to be a life partner. But here's the other thing. You want someone similar to you. He's speaking from a male perspective, which we're going to come back to. You want someone similar to you if you're male. You're going to be the breadwinner. You're going to marry someone. You want someone similar to you because you want them to raise your children. You want them to share your values, your perspectives, because you are looking. This is the connection. Under comparative advantage, you're going to be the breadwinner. They're going to be the child rearer. And when you choose a child rearer, you want someone whose tastes, approaches, cultures are close enough so that when they raise the child, they do it in a manner that fits your cultural expectations. You're educated, you want an educated wife because you want her to raise children who will go to college. You're a hard-working blue-collar guy, you want a wife who is also a blue-collar gal, because then she will raise a child who will be taught from age 14 to work with their hands, be tough, earn their living, right? So you want to raise someone to do the foods you're used with. You want someone who's going to send kids to the right kind of schools. So associative mating is very interesting, because on the utility side, you want someone very similar to you. This is the beauty of comparative advantage. I want someone similar to me, so marginal utilities should be very similar, but just enough, not absolute, just comparative, just enough difference to justify the gender division of labor. So one of Becker's really great insights was, how do you combine this desire for people who are very like us, similar to us, when we date, when we ask, swipe left, swipe right. Yeah? But then, when it comes to gender division of labor, we want them to do something different with their lives than we do. So I really love an educated woman, smart, lawyer, doctor, MA, totally intellectual. I love her. Multicultural, cool with all kinds of cultures. I love her. And all of that, I still imagine she's going to use to become a housewife, to become a mother. How do I justify that? More importantly, how does that make economic sense to both these parties? And the answer is, you want people who are close to you, but not same. Just enough difference. Close to you, but just enough difference. So that I can be the professor who's got the educated wife who follows him as a lecturer part-time, takes care of the kids, does some work. I can be the doctor who marries a nurse. I can be the lawyer who marries a clerk. Right? So associative mating allows you to put together utility with comparative advantage. Someone like me, utility, just enough difference for the comparative advantage to work. So that is the first integration of utility into Becker's theory of the family, along with comparative advantage. Becker didn't stop there. He also has a theory of bride price, dowry, of abortion. As it happens, he has one of the earliest theories of reproductive choice. He has a theory of quality versus quantity in reproductive decisions. He's got theories of divorce. He's really interesting in how he integrates all of this economic analysis into the theory of choice for marriage, households, and so on. So you never thought econ would be about who you married, why, and how. But Becker actually deserved the Nobel Prize because he did that. That was pretty impressive. And the data showed he was right. Mostly. there are some places where it turns out he wasn't quite right, which will take us to our final unit and our next unit.